Well, greetings and welcome to another Prophetic Insights. In our last Prophetic Insight, we closed with the book of Revelation in chapter 14. So now we're going to begin with Revelation chapter 15 and start moving forward. Before I begin, though, I'd like to start with a word of prayer. Our Father in heaven, Father, I believe that I have been chosen by you to be your voice and your mouthpiece. And so I pray and ask that your blessings would be upon my mind, upon my lips. Father, that all that would be said would be to bring glory to your name. I ask your blessings to be upon the minds and the hearts of those as well that would hear, so that in all of this, Father, you would indeed be glorified. We thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And so in this presentation, we want to look at the wrath of God. What is the wrath of God? When will it be expressed? And who will receive the wrath of God? And so let's take a look here in Revelation chapter 15 and verse 1. It says, "And I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, for in them is filled up the wrath of God." And so we see in the end times that the wrath of God is demonstrated in the 7 last plagues. Now, we don't want to be part of the wrath of God. We don't want to be part of the 7 last plagues. And so we want to look at very carefully who is going to receive them and how we can avoid them and when will they be given. And so we want to go and look back at 2 previous chapters. Now, I've given presentations on those in other Prophetic Insights videos, which I'll leave links to in Revelation chapter 13 and 14. We're going to be referring back to them, and so I'm going to be brief. But I pray by God's grace I will be concise and clear, because I believe that we are living in Earth's final hours of history. And God's message needs to be plain and it needs to be clear so that all may understand. And so I'm going to be very straight and very direct. But I pray that God's grace would be with me, that this would be done in love as well. And so to find out who receives these 7 last plagues, we're going to take a look at Revelation chapter 14, and we're going to look at verses 9 and 10. Verse 9 says, "And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand," verse 10 says, "the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation." So it says here clearly, as we've been expressing in these videos, that the whole great controversy that's taking place upon this earth is centered around worship. Who are we going to give our allegiance to? The God of heaven or the God of this earth? What do I mean by that? Because many people believe that they are worshiping God, and yet many and most Christians have been deceived that they are not worshiping God. Now, remember, in this great controversy with worship, there's only 2 choices. We're either worshiping God at His throne, or we are worshiping at the throne of Satan. And so it is the issue of worship that we need to take a look at. We're going to look at worship. We're going to look at the beast, his image, and his mark. Because it says, if any man worship the beast, who is this beast that they're worshiping? And who is this image that they're worshiping? And what is this mark that they are going to present to the world? And so in verse 9, it also says that they will receive this mark in their forehead or in their hand. Now, this is not speaking necessarily of a literal visible mark. It's more than that. Satan may use it to deceive people, that he may make it visible. But this is speaking of the forehead, because in our forehead, it is our frontal lobe. And in our frontal lobe, we make our moral decisions to choose right and wrong. And in our hand means that our hand will do what the mind tells it to do. So those who receive this mark, the Bible tells us that they're going to be convinced or deceived to take it. And it's going to happen through miracles Jesus told us in Matthew 24 that there's going to be great miracles, elsewhere too in the Bible, which we're going to take a look at, that there's going to be miracles performed that is going to cause people to stand back and be amazed and say that this must be the truth. Not based on God's word, because I believe what I see. I ran into an atheist the other day, and I was talking to him about God. He didn't want any part of it. He said to me, he said, if I can't see it, I don't believe it. And so it will help us to understand that how are even non-Christians, if this whole issue is about worship, how will non-Christians receive this mark? It is through these miracles. Satan has the power to do miracles. We're going to take a look at that. And so when they see these miraculous things being done, even atheists are going to say, there must be something there. How are you going to get those who worship Buddha or Hindu or these other different religions to accept this mark? Well, there's coming too, Christ said in other places in the Word of God, that there's going to be economic crises. It tells us that there are going to be climate disasters. It tells us that there are going to be pestilences or diseases and famines. It is going to get very difficult to the point where people will be willing to surrender all of their freedoms so that they could have security. Because they've not put their security in Jesus Christ. They have been deceived. And so this is the forehead and the hand. And it says that it's going to be without mixture, this wrath of God. What does it mean to be without mixture? Well, we look out through different times in the Bible, we see that God's wrath was demonstrated in other areas. We saw the destruction of the world in the first time with the flood. There was mercy. There were lives still spared, and out of that time, God raised up a people out of there. Even when God punished His people throughout history, there was always mercy mingled in. But this time, this is it. There's no more mercy. We want to take a look at what does that mean, no more mercy. So let's take a look at our first issue, and that is worship. We're going to be brief here. Let's move forward. Now, I've shared these verses many times, and I'm going to share them again because this is at the foundation of this false worship system. And we need to understand this. We find this in Isaiah chapter 14, verses 12 through 14. Verse 12 says, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations?" This was Satan. His name in heaven was Lucifer, but he was cast out of heaven because he rebelled against the government of God. He says, I have a better way. I should be consulted in what takes place in this universe. God said, it can't be that way. You are a created being. You don't understand the finer things that need to take place. But God is in control, not the creature. And so Satan was cast out of heaven. Verse 13, it says, "For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north." This is Satan speaking. He says, I know I've been cast out, he said, but he says, I'm going to ascend into heaven. He can't go there physically anymore because God cast him out. He cannot go back. But in the minds and the hearts of people who worship, who think they're worshiping God, he wants to present himself that he is God, that he sits in heaven. And he says, I will exalt my throne. He has a throne that he sits upon. Remember, this is about worship, this issue. So what throne has to do with worship that stands in opposition of God? We've talked about this. This is the throne of the papacy. It is the papal throne that he works through. It is a system that is an antichrist system that stands in opposition to that of God. The rest of verse 13 says, that I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. This is where the temple sat in Jerusalem. It was the side of north of Mount Zion. And it says that he wants to sit there. In other words, he wants to be worshipped. Where Jesus is supposed to be in that temple, he's our great high priest now in the heavenly temple. And he is working on our behalf for the salvation of men. But Satan says, no, I'm going to sit into this temple. I want people to worship me. And many people are, and they don't realize it. Verse 14 goes on to say, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. He wants to be like God. So whatever God has, Satan has a counterfeit for it. And so he twists the words of God. He gives new translations and changes the words and the meanings that people will come to understand him without them even knowing it, that he is God. Let's move on. It says now this issue is worship. It says worship the beast. Who is this beast? We've covered this. Again, I'll leave links to this. In Revelation chapter 13, we looked at this beast. I'm going to read a couple verses from there as a reminder to make sure that we understand that this issue is worshiping the beast. And this is Satan who is wanting this worship. And this is the ones who receive the wrath of God because they are not worshiping God. Revelation 13:2, it says, And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet as were the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. So who gave this beast? We understand it to be the papal throne, the Roman Catholic Church. It says that the dragon gave him his power. The dragon gave him his seat or his throne. He said, my throne. And he has great authority. Who is this dragon? We need to find from the Word of God who this dragon is. We go back to Revelation chapter 12, verse 9. It says, And the great dragon was cast out. This was Lucifer, remember? We just said he was cast out. It said he was cast out. That old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into this earth, and his angels were cast out with him. It wasn't just him that was cast out. He has angels that work in his behalf as well, to bring about this gathering of worship unto himself. So this dragon, we see very clearly, it says that he is the devil and Satan. And so it is the devil and Satan, very clearly we see this, that gave this beast power, which is the Roman Catholic Church. It is Satan. It is very clear. And when I say these things, I have to and must say these things because God has a people in there. This is not against Roman Catholics. They are innocent because it says in verse 9 of Revelation 12, it says, which deceiveth the whole world. They have been deceived. They have not been given the true word that they can understand for themselves. Let's move on. Verse 3 of Revelation 13 says this, And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. You see, the Roman Catholic Church used to be in great power at one time for 1,260 years, for a times and a half a time, for 42 months. This was called the Dark Ages because they hid the Word of God. They said nobody can have that Word of God because it reveals to them, to the world around them, the deception that Satan was trying to bring in. God's Word is light and it exposed the Roman Catholic Church power for what it was. And so they wanted the Word of God hidden. That's why it was called the Dark Ages. But they lost their power. They had the power through other nations and kings. Because you see, the Roman Catholic Church converted the kings through deception of other nations. And it was through these other nations that she was able to control the masses because she didn't have an army to do so. So it was a bringing together of church and state to control the minds of people. It was to control their consciences, to tell them this is how they must worship or you will die. But it says it received a deadly wound. That power was taken away from them in 1798 by Napoleon. They captured the Vatican, took away their church-state power. But let's move on from that. It says that they will worship also the image. What is this image? We took a look at this too in Revelation chapter 13. I'm going to read a few verses to you and unpack this quickly. Revelation 13 verse 11, it says, And he beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. This first beast, this Roman power, came up out of the sea. In other words, the sea represents people, multitudes, and nations. It came up in an area of the world where it was populated, and this was in Europe. Now this beast, it comes up out of the earth. In other words, in a sparsely populated area. This was considered the United States of America. It had 2 horns like a lamb. God sent His people. He opened up the earth that God's people who were being persecuted by the Roman Catholic Church to come to America, to flee this persecution. And the United States was founded on these 2 horns. A horn represents a power, and these powers were lamb-like. In other words, they were peaceful. This first power was Protestantism. It gave the opportunity for freedom of religion. The second was republicanism. Each individual had the inalienable right given to them by God to choose to worship God as they best saw fit. So these are the 2 great powers, but it says that it spake as a dragon. The dragon was Satan. Something started changing within this nation. We see these changes already taking place. Verse 12, it says, and he exerciseth all the power of the first beast. Remember the power of the first beast? It was bringing church and state together to force worship according to what they deemed was best, for the common good, perhaps. It says, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. So we see here that this first beast was a Roman Catholic Church who Satan gave them the power. So to worship this papal authority is worshiping Satan. And so when the United States of America, by bringing church and state together, they're going to cause the world to worship this first beast, whose power and seat is that of Satan. And the whole world is being deceived, the Bible says, and they don't even understand it. That's why we are giving these presentations, so that the world can know of the great deception that is taking place. Let's move on. Verse 13, it says, and he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And verse 14, and deceiveth them that dwell in the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. They have power to do these miracles. This is Protestant America. It is apostate Protestantism, because they have turned their backs on the law of God, and they have set up their own law. We're going to open this up a little bit more. But it says through these miracles, by forcing the world to worship this first beast, the Roman Catholic Church. And we're going to see what this whole issue of worship is about. We're going to pinpoint it. But because the Protestants of America have lost their way, they have turned their back on the law of God. It was the same thing that Satan did when he was in heaven, and God cast him out. Satan said, I have a better way. When we turn away from the law of God, we are saying that I have a better way. And that was what Satan insinuated to Eve in the very beginning. When he tempted her to eat of the fruit, God said not to. But Satan said God knows something. He says he knows that if you eat of it thereof, that you will become as gods, and you will know good and evil. That's what it did. That's what sin does. Sin causes us to set the things of God aside, and then we set up our own standards. That's making ourselves gods. Let's move on. It says, the remainder of verse 14, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast. This image to the beast is the bringing of church and state together to enforce worship. It says, and had the wound by a sword and did live. So we see that this papal power is again going to come into rule. Watch carefully. Watch the workings of the Pope. Verse 15, it says, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause. We speak through our laws and a government, and we cause by enforcing them. So it's going to be a law enforced that as many as would not worship, remember, this whole issue is about worship. As many that would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. This is going to be the sanction against those who will not worship this image of the beast, this bringing together of church and state in America. Verse 16, it says, and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead. We talked about this, but this is the enforcement of it. Verse 17 says that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark. So this, we see that the beast is a Roman Catholic Church, and to worship there is that is the throne of Satan. This image of the beast is producing a power and a figure that's going to use the government to enforce worship as the Roman Catholic Church did in the Dark Ages. This is that image to the beast, and they're going to enforce a mark. What is this mark that you must receive? Because we must not receive it or we'll receive the wrath of God. So let's take a look at this mark. In Revelation chapter 15, verse 2, we're going to look at something interesting here. It says, "And I saw, as it were, a sea of glass, mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast, over his image, and over his mark." We talked about these three things. Now we see the sea of glass. And it says that there are those around them that had gotten the victory that are at this sea of glass. What is this sea of glass? Revelation chapter 4 verse 6 tells us. It says, "And before the throne there was a sea of glass like unto crystal." This is the throne room in heaven. These people who got the victory over the beast, over the image, and over this mark, that's where they will be because they were worshiping the true God. They will be found around the throne of God. And that's where God wants you, my friends. Revelation chapter 14 and verse 12 tells us this. It says, "Here is the patience of the saints." These saints are patiently enduring. The word patience means to endure or to persevere. Because there is coming a time very soon where they're going to have to endure. Those who want to stand for the true God and to be worshiping Him and Him alone are going to have to endure a lot. It says, "Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus." Who are those that are going to be around that throne room? It says they're going to be keeping the commandments of God. All 10 of them. And so this has to do with this mark, and we're going to take a look at this. But it also says, "and the faith of Jesus." There's a difference between faith in Jesus, because the Bible tells us that the devils even believe in Jesus and tremble. So simply having faith in Jesus is not enough. It's having the faith of Jesus, to trust fully in His Father, to submit His life fully to His Father, that He would not even sin by even a thought. We must have that faith of Jesus in order to keep those commandments. Let's move on. Revelation chapter 12 verse 17, it says, "And the dragon," this was Satan, it says, "was wroth with the woman," this was the church, "and he said, and he went to make war with the remnant of her seed." There's going to be a small group that has not been deceived to worship Satan. And this small group is a remnant. And who is this remnant? It tells us, it says, "which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ." Again, we see those who are going to be victorious. They are keeping the commandments of God. This is giving us a clue of what this mark is. Revelation 15:4. Listen carefully to this verse. It says, "Who shall not fear thee, O Lord, and glorify thy name? For thou only art holy, for all nations come and worship before thee, for thy judgments are made manifest." The question is asked here in verse 4 of Revelation 15. And listen to these words. It says, "Who shall not fear thee? Glorify thy name." We see these four words, worship and judgment, in another place. And they ask this question rightly so. Because in Revelation chapter 14 verse 7, we see something here. This is part of what we call the first angel's message. In Revelation 14:7 it says this, "saying with a loud voice, Fear God, and give glory to Him, for the hour of His judgment has come, and worship Him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters." This was the advice given by this first angel to the whole world, that we must fear God, not fear man, but all that God says we must do, and to give glory to Him. The Bible says, "For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God." If sinning is falling short of that glory, in other words, to give glory to God, we must cease from sin. In other words, it will be a demonstration of keeping the commandments of God, because the commandments of God are broken down by Jesus Christ Himself. Love to God, the first 4, and love to our neighbors, the last 6. The whole principle of the 10 Commandments is love. The Bible tells us that God is love. The law is a representation of His character. And we are to have that image of God we were created in. He's trying to reestablish us back into that image. And so we must have that character. That law is a mirror for us to see. Do we reflect the image of Christ? It is a standard. And so to give glory to God is to be obedient to Him. For the hour of His judgment has come, because there is a judgment in this standard, this mirror that we're to look at. It is 10 commandments. Do I line up with them? I can't keep them of myself, but by God's grace I can. And we are all being judged. We're going to look at this. I covered this in other presentations. I'll leave those links. It says, and worship Him. Remember, this is the great issue. We must worship Him. How do we know that we are worshiping the true God? It says, because He made the heaven, the earth, and the sea, and the fountains of waters. It is because He is our Creator. In Genesis chapter 2, verses 1 through 3, it says this, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. God finished creating in 6 days, but He was not done. Verse 2, it says, and on the 7th day, God ended His work which He had made, and He rested on the 7th day from all His works which He had made. Verse 3, it says, and God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it. God made that day holy because creation week was not complete. There needed to be an expression of who made all of this for mankind. Who are we to be thankful for all of this creation that God gave us dominion over, that we can enjoy, that would provide our sustenances for our health? Water, air, sunshine, food, the friendship and companionship of others. It says, because that in it He had rested from all His work, which God created and made. The 7th day was part of the creation week. That's why it refers us back to worship Him. He is the Creator. And on that day of creation was the 7th day that He had blessed and sanctified. He had set it aside for mankind, all of mankind. This was not just for the Jews. There was only Adam and Eve in the beginning. In Ezekiel chapter 20, verses 19 and 20, it says, I am the Lord your God. Walk in my statutes and keep my judgments and do them. Verse 20, it says, and hallow my Sabbaths, and they shall be a sign. He says, my Sabbaths will be a sign between me and you, that ye may know that I am the Lord your God. This is how we know we are worshiping the true God. He says, because my Sabbath days are a sign. They are a sign between me and you. Remember, this was given at creation. This is not a Jewish Sabbath. We're starting to unpack something here clearly. What is this mark? I want to read some statements to you. Now, I've taken these from writings from the Catholic Church. I want you to listen very carefully. This one was taken from Cardinal Gibbons in Faith of Our Fathers, a 92nd edition, page 89. He says this. He says, you may read the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, he says, and you will not find a single line authorizing the sanction of Sunday, and he is correct. He goes on to say, the Scriptures enforce the religious observance of Saturday, a day which we, the Catholic Church, never sanctify. They don't, because he is correct. There is not one single line that sanctions the observance of Sunday, not one. If you are worshiping upon Sunday, I pray that you would please not be offended, but carefully examine these, because God does not want you to receive His wrath. He wants you to be in the kingdom of heaven with Him for eternity. Another statement. It says again, the Catholic Church, by virtue of her divine mission, changed the day from Saturday to Sunday. This was taken from the Catholic Mirror, an official publication of James Cardinal Gibbons, September 23rd, 1893. So here we're starting to see what this mark is. It was a change of God's seventh-day Sabbath to the first day, which the Catholic Church freely admits. And remember, whose throne was that? That was Satan's. He says, it's my throne. I want to be like God. I'm going to set up my own worship day, so that when you worship on that day, you're actually worshiping me. That is why he had that day changed. Another statement. Listen carefully. It says, Protestants do not realize. And there are many Protestants who don't realize this. That's why we do these videos, so that Protestants can come to realize this. It says, Protestants do not realize that by observing Sunday, they accept the authority of the spokesperson of the church, the Pope. Remember, this was Satan's throne, my throne, to stand in opposition of God. He wants to be like the Most High. He wants worship. He has a false system set up. And it says, the church says this was found in Our Sunday Visitor, February 5th, 1950. It says, by accepting Sunday, or by observing Sunday, is recognizing the authority of the Pope. Another statement. It says, of course the Catholic Church claims that the change Saturday Sabbath to Sunday was her act. Listen carefully. It says, and the act is a mark of her ecclesiastical authority in religious things. This is from H.F. Thomas, Chancellor of Cardinal Gibbons. They claim that the change from this true Sabbath, the seventh day, to the first day, it says that it is a mark of her ecclesiastical authority. I think you're understanding what this mark is. One more statement from the Catholic Church. It says, the Catholic Church claims that the Church is above the Bible. Did you know that they made that claim? They do. They claim that they are above the Bible, and it says, and this transference of the Sabbath observance is proof of that fact. They said, if you don't believe it, we changed it. The Bible doesn't support it. We changed it. It proves that we are above the Bible. This was taken from the Catholic Record of London, Ontario, September 1st, 1923. Revelation chapter 14 and verse 8. This is the second angel's message. It says this, and there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Babylon is this great false system of worship. And it says that she made all nations drink of the wine of her wrath. These wines are her false doctrines, her false teachings. She slipped them into different churches and different denominations, into our governments, into societies, that so many people have imbibed them and they don't even realize it. And it is beyond just this Sunday sacredness, which is the mark. You know, and as I share these things, because it is most Protestants who accept this false day as well. And by honoring that false day, most Protestants, in reality, I'm being very straight, they're worshiping Satan. Because that day is not of God. But God gives this second angel's message for a purpose, because it's repeated in Revelation chapter 18 and verse 4. It says, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people. It says that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. Those who are in this false system, they will receive the plagues. But God says, I have a people in there. And how are those people in there supposed to come out if they don't know that they're in a false system? That's why we must give these messages. There may be people who will be upset with me, but I am saying this on behalf of God, because He says, I have a people in there. And He's saying, come out of her, my people. God has His people in these denominations, and they must be called out. They must understand clearly that they are in a false system. It is not based on it is written. John chapter 14 and verse 29, it says, and now I have told you before it come to pass, that when it has come to pass you might believe. Many probably are upset with me, or frustrated, or scratching their head. Is this really true? I tell you all of these things because you're going to see them indeed to come to pass, so that when you see them come to pass, you'll consider, He may be right. And you can ask God right there and then and say, Lord, forgive me. I didn't know. Yes, I questioned you and I doubted. But do not doubt in the love of God for you. Even though you may have been led astray and been practicing these things, God says that's okay. Come out. He loves you. He wants you to spend all eternity with Him. Revelation 15, let's finish it up. verses 5, 6, and 8, it says, "And after that I looked and beheld the temple of the tabernacle of the testimony in heaven was opened." So John sees here that there's a tabernacle in heaven. We talked about this in another presentation. Jesus Christ, as our high priest, is working on our behalf for our salvation in the most holy place, in the temple of heaven. And it says very clearly in this verse, it says, it is open. This temple is still open. In other words, the work that he's going on right now is the finishing of the judgment. He's going through the books. This message is going out. Those who hear it, they have to make a choice now. Am I going to accept God's commandments, or am I going to accept the commandments of men? God's day or man's day? And he's going to look at the books, and he's going to see that all have made their decision. And that book is going to be closed soon. But right now, I tell you, brothers and sisters, that way is open right now. There still is mercy. God was willing to forgive right now, but there's coming a time soon and very soon when those books will be closed, that judgment will be finished. All will have made their decisions for God or against Him. But right now we see that temple is open. Verse 6, it says, "And the 7 angels came out of that temple, having the 7 plagues, clothed in pure and white linen, having their breasts girded with golden girdles." Verse 8, "And the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from His power, and no man was able to enter into the temple till the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were fulfilled." We see when that judgment book is done and closed, that's when the angels come out to pour out the wrath of God, the 7 last plagues, because it isn't determined until then, till this message goes to the world, who is going to choose for God or against. They all must make their decision. Once they do, God says all the decisions have been made. The books are closed. No man can come in for mercy no more. They've all made their decisions. "Go forth now and pour forth the vials of my wrath upon those who worship the beast, the image, and those who receive that mark. They must receive it." That was their choice. Revelation chapter 22, and the closing verses 11 through 14. When this is all done and Jesus closes the books, this is what He says: "He that is unjust, let him be unjust still. He which is filthy, let him be filthy still. And he that is righteous, let him be righteous still. And he that is holy, let him be holy still." Once this judgment is done, probation is closed for mankind. Wherever you stand in that decision, that final decision to serve God or to serve Satan, it is done. It is closed. If you are filthy, no more mercy. If you are holy, you will stand in that sea of glass. Verse 12 says, "And behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me to give every man according as his work shall be." That reward is not given until everybody makes that decision. So there is and can be no secret rapture. When people die, they simply rest in the grave. They don't go to heaven or hell because the reward, the judgment isn't done. This is another great misunderstanding. But Jesus says, "I bring my reward with me." When the judgment is closed, the plagues have been poured out. After they've been poured out upon the wicked, Jesus comes to receive those who had the patience of the saints, those who kept His commandments, those who had the faith of Jesus Christ. Verse 13, Christ says, "I am the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last." Verse 14, listen carefully. Jesus says, "Blessed are they that do His commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life and may enter in through the gates into the city." God wants you there, but it must be made clear that His commandments must be kept. They have not been done away. To do away with God's commandments, you will fail, because this is the standard that we are judged on. And God wants you to be there, brothers and sisters. So we must learn to understand who our Creator is. And what is that sign that identifies that He is our God? What is that mark that shows that we are giving authority to the God of this world? That mark is Sunday sacredness. That sign of God is His true Sabbath day. And so, my friends, I pray that you please would consider these things, that you would choose not to receive of those plagues. May God's blessings be with you. Let's close with a word of prayer. Our Father in heaven, these are some very strong and straightforward things, but I think they need to be done this way. It must cause the world to gain attention to what is taking place. There is great deception going on. We must search the Scriptures for ourselves to see if the things are true. We can't go by what we see or by what we hear, but it is by it is written. And so, Father, bless those who are searching. I pray that you would give them wisdom and understanding and love of the truth. And so, Lord, may your blessings be upon them. We thank you for your goodness and for this opportunity and time for mercy. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.